1000. Now let's move to this story. Sir David Attenborough. Who doesn't like a bit of Sir David Attenborough? There must be something wrong with that man. There's got to be, isn't there? I mean, he's a nice bloke. How old's Attenborough now? Can we just check that? I'm going to go 93. Yeah, and I find that utterly incredible that he's that age, because you see him walk. I saw him on Graham Norton that long ago. You know, he walks quite well. 93, right? 94. Man alive. He talks. You know, he's still fluid. Doesn't travel as much as he used to. Well, none of us do, frankly. But you know, he stopped travelling a little bit. And he's just a nice. You know, he's a nice bloke. The face of wildlife. He's known globally. He's decent. And of course he knows more about your monkey than anyone could ever know. I mean, this is just a bloke who we followed from the Blue Planet stuff and those programs over the years. As filming techniques have got better, those programs have just got better. You watch it, man, how did you film that stuff? However, he's kind of waded in to a new row, and I don't want to, bearing in mind this is Mr. Nice Guy, which is, I wonder, you know, whether are there any flies on Attenborough? Is there anything, is he like a secret shoplifter at the weekends or something? There's got to be something about Attenborough that is not to like, but who knows? At the moment, we only see this decent bloke who's now changed the kind of area that he talks about into Western capitalism. He's warned that the excesses of Western capitalism must be curbed in order to protect nature, adding that people are beginning to realise that greed does not bring joy. He was speaking on a podcast. He said that a more equal society where those who have a great deal have a little less would help the natural world flourish again. He went on to say, we're going to have to live more economically than we do, and we can do that. However, the veteran broadcaster did add that he didn't believe that capitalism was dead. Jonathan Davis is an economist and presenter of the Booms and Busts podcast. Well, there's some good news to start with, Jonathan. Capitalism isn't dead, says David Attenborough.
Well, he's wrong about a lot of things, and he's also, unfortunately, wrong about that. We haven't had any semblance of capitalism, I mean, perhaps for another discussion, since the 1980s, as I can see it.
Really?
Well, what we have is government intervention, central banks printing money, hand over fist, trillions of dollars, pounds, euros, yuan, whatever you want to call it, bailing out financial markets, bailing out failed businesses in 2008,
sure.
March this year. We haven't had capitalism for 30 years.
So real capitalism where the markets kind of function themselves, they work things out, they respond, some go southwards, some go northwards, and they do so without state intervention, or as little of it as possible. That kind of capitalism.
Well, that is capitalism. What we have is corporatism, cronyism, where if you're mates with the governor of the Bank of England or the chairman of the Federal Reserve in America, etc., or if you're deemed to be a bank that cannot fail, then you'll be bailed out when you fail. Well, you know, that does not engender competition and free markets and opportunity. What that does is entrench people who have been failing for years, and unfortunately, ultimately the people who pay for it all is not politicians. It's we, the 99%. We're the ones paying for it all. That's why the cost of living is so high, because we've got to bail these guys out, apparently. I couldn't agree less, but that's what they say we have to do.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, the wider issue about excess, we need less greed, which will bring more joy. I mean, he's obviously not analysing capitalism quite as deeply as yourself, Jonathan, but what do you make of that wider point, that, you know, you take money away from those that have more of it, it makes them happier and makes everybody else happier? I'm not sure I follow that.
It's a funny thing, but I was under the impression that Jeremy Corbyn lost the last general election. Everyone's talking about taxing the rich. That, you know, the rich, unfortunately, have got richer because they keep getting bailed out. But some of the rich have got rich because they've actually made our lives better. Like, for instance, with PCs, with the internet, so on and so on. So, you know, there are James Dyson There are great reasons for being rich, unfortunately. But for him to say, and for many, he's not the only one, but for many others to say that because of Western capitalism, which, as I say, we don't have, that is affecting the environment. Well, my goodness, he could not be more wrong, because take, for example, the United Kingdom, where our carbon emissions are the lowest for decades, and right across the West, they are the Paris Accord, the Paris Agreement, they are taking action after action to reduce carbon emissions after the Industrial Revolution. If he has a problem with industry and so on affecting the environment, he shouldn't be looking west. He should be looking to the east. China is the biggest polluter on the planet. But of course, it's nothing to do. Whatever the interview was on the podcast, it's nothing to do with the environment. That's a smokescreen. It's like the Extinction Rebellion, the Black Lives Movement, Matters movement, all that sort of stuff. I'm sorry, it's nothing to do with the issue that these guys are talking about.
Interesting.
It's about revolutionary Marxism. They want to change the system for their benefit. It's nothing to do with what they're actually saying it is.
And you'd wonder why the multimillionaire David Attenborough would even be joining in with this debate.
Well, when you've had 50 years at the BBC, what are you going to do?
I think on that point, thank you. You're probably right. He's finished trying to gnaw his own elbows at the nature of current affairs over there at the P. We'll talk about that a little later. Jonathan Davis.